I have some good news about the show today. Secular Talk is now officially off the YouTube blacklist. So let me explain the backstory. Everybody bear with me. I know you've probably heard me discuss this roughly 15 times already, but some people might, they might stumble across this video and have not seen the previous segments on YouTube Apocalypse, so I feel like it's necessary to give the backstory virtually every time we talk about it. But I want to give you the backstory again and then tell you what this means and then explain what we do going forward. So, about, a week ago, week and a half ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, was the beginning of what we're calling YouTube Apocalypse. You had advertisers basically decide en masse, we're done advertising with YouTube. Now, why did they decide that? Well, it basically boils down to an article in the Times of London and an article in the Wall Street Journal, and then later on there were others in other outlets. But they were hit pieces on YouTube that found really, really rare instances of an ad for a mainstream company getting on hateful content. So there was like this neo-Nazi-esque channel that had an ad for Kraft on it, I believe. That was the Times of London example. And what happened is advertisers saw that and they panicked and they went, I don't want my product alongside extremist material, so I'm pulling all of my ads from YouTube. Now, understand, they're basically overreacting to a non-problem because, if anything, the YouTube algorithms were already too tough. 99.999% of the time, you're not going to get an ad on hateful content. Again, the only time it slips through the cracks, there's a logical explanation. Like, for example, if the ad gets on a hateful channel, but that particular video was not hateful. If there's nothing hateful in the title and nothing hateful in the tags, how the fuck is YouTube supposed to know if it's hateful? So you don't have this widespread issue of ads getting on hateful content. Again, the problem is really the opposite, that channels like myself and other news and politics channels, whenever we talk about certain issues, it was instant demonetization. So you can't talk about ISIS, you can't talk about anything vaguely sexuality related. And then recently now they added new things into this category. You can't talk about religion, you can't talk about race, you can't talk about gender without basically instant demonetization. So advertisers overreacted and ran away. YouTube overreacted and said, oh, we're going to, look, we demonetize 5 times more videos. They bragged about that to the advertisers to try to get them to come back. It's like they're bringing the carcass of channels like ours to the foot of the advertisers and saying, see, daddy, did I do a good job? We're cracking down on more channels unnecessarily. Please come back. So how is it that we're now at the point that Secular Talk was literally on a blacklist and now we're off of it? I have no idea. I'm utterly clueless as to how that happened. Now, how do I know we were on a blacklist? YouTube would swear up and down they don't have a blacklist. They would swear up and down. But as David Pakman revealed the other week, he got an email, he got a letter from somebody who advertises specifically with his show, with our show, and with some other progressive media outlets. And she said, look, I'm saying I specifically want to buy it with these people and the ads aren't running. So that means YouTube was like, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. We don't care. Even if you say specifically we want to advertise with them, we're not going to let you advertise with them. I don't know what the fuck to call that other than a blacklist. And as everybody knows, we had 475,000 views one day about, what is it now, 4 days ago, maybe 5 days ago? And we made, again, I've been warned I'm not allowed because of YouTube terms of service to give you exact dollar figures, but even though I violated that a few times, I got to be careful about it. So, but I will say this, it was well over a 95%, in fact, over a 99% cut in revenue, even though we had 475,000 views, which means we're beating many of the shows on CNN in the key demographic. I mean, that's crazy. You have a channel that's more popular than CNN in the key demographic, and they're like, yeah, no ads for you and no revenue stream. So, but now, randomly, we're off the list. People started messaging me, not yesterday, but the day before, 2 days ago, like at night. They were like, I just saw an ad on your channel, dog. I just saw an ad on your channel. I saw one of the tweets and I was like, yeah, okay. Then I got a second one and I was like, Then when I got the third one, I was like, oh shit, that may have actually happened. So I went and I took a look and it's true. So we're now off of the YouTube blacklist. That's the good news. There's bad news too, though. Here's the bad news. YouTube apocalypse isn't over, because I know, because I speak to many other YouTubers, that it's now affecting, it's like a wave. It's now affecting smaller channels specifically. So, you know, I have another connect who tells me, look, I've had this theory and I've seen it anecdotally in previous instances. When they roll out some sort of big change, it affects the bigger channels at first, and then it trickles down to the smaller channels. So there are channels that, you know, and they're not, when I say small, I don't mean small overall, I just mean small comparatively. So there are channels that have maybe 100,000 subscribers or so that just, boom, hammer dropped on them recently. And it's a problem. So YouTube, we still don't know what's really going on. And so we don't know how in the woods we are, if we're going to get out of the woods. We don't know what the new normal is. But that's why it's still super duper important that you support not just me, but also those other progressive channels that you might like, because it could just be now that they're starting to feel the hit. So whether it's the Humanist Report, whether it's the Benjamin Dixon Show, whether it's Jimmy Dore's show, David Pakman's show, obviously, he was kind of hit at the same time as me, but we're all affected to one extent or another. It's just a matter of when you get affected, how long it lasts, and also what is the new normal. So I could tell you guys, we're now off the blacklist, which means we're not making virtually nothing anymore. But it's still like a 50% cut. In what other industry are you like, yay, I got my pay cut in half? I'm not kidding. That was actually my reaction. My reaction was like, yes, oh goodness, oh God, thank God, it's only a 50% cut. That's awesome. So that, you know, that's a weird kind of thing to be celebrating. But I think the most important point is we don't know if we're out of the woods or what happens from here. And bottom line, man, I don't trust YouTube at all anymore. At all. Because this proved to me, I never knew it was this volatile. I never knew they could just, pull the rug out from underneath you, go fuck yourself. I had no idea it was like this. Well, now I learned a very, very valuable lesson. You simply can't put almost all your eggs in one basket, meaning, hey, the main source of revenue for the show is this volatile thing that can be jacked from you in a heartbeat because of PC outrage and hysteria and advertisers running away and YouTube overreacting and cracking down. I'm now convinced 100% YouTube doesn't care about these independent content creators like us. They just don't. I mean, that's why YouTube TV rolled out around the same time we got demonetized, and it was YouTube apocalypse. Where do you think a lot of the ad money that's now been jacked from the independent creators is going to go? It's going to go to YouTube TV, to those creators. And when you go look at the list of who's part of YouTube TV, it's all TV. So it was all the ad money used to go to TV. Then, oh, look at that. Now you have this better thing coming up, this real free market where independent creators do a great job. And now we started to eclipse TV in terms of ad revenue. And then, wow, right as soon as that happened, boom, you have TV leapfrog us, do a deal with YouTube. And now YouTube is trying to switch the model up to basically be YouTube TV and more compete with Netflix and go back to a more traditional model than this free and open forum, which was the beauty of YouTube to begin with. And then boom, you revert all the ad revenue back to them, or a lot of the ad revenue back to them. So I don't trust YouTube at all. And I think it's super important now. I learned a very valuable lesson that everybody has to diversify their income stream. And it's not just me. Obviously people who do this as a career and they've set up businesses and they have workers and all that stuff. It's not just me. It's all the other outlets I named. So what I'm going to do is in the video description of this video, I'm going to leave the Patreon to a bunch of different big time, progressive outlets, liberal outlets, atheist outlets, and support them if you can, man. I mean, that's what it really boils down to. And I was thinking about it last night. I don't think you guys understand how much it's appreciated, or maybe you do. I really don't know. If you just do like a $1 or $2 a month contribution to your favorite outlets. I mean, you guys basically, you saved this show. I mean, when we had our ad revenue cut, literally over 95%, it was like, whoa, goodness, there's going to be gigantic changes coming to how we do stuff. But then you guys swooped in via Patreon and you're like, sit down, son, we got you. And it was really humbling. But you have to understand that it's not just me, it's also other up-and-comers who are not, they don't have as big of an audience behind them yet, so maybe if they get saved, it's not as pronounced. It's not as big of a bump. And I don't know what their overhead costs are like, and obviously there are all these different variables, but I'm going to leave a bunch of different Patreon links in the video description here. And, you know, whatever, $2 a month to each, or to however much you're comfortable, whatever it might be, man. And obviously, you know, for our show, as I've said before, we're now going to solely rely, or I shouldn't say solely, because that's not true. We have the Amazon link, we have Patreon, but we're going to mostly rely on Patreon. So patreon.com/seculartalk. $2 a month would mean the world. And also just keep using the Amazon link. So I'll leave the Amazon link on the screen here. I'll also leave that in the video description box. And that's like, if you already shop on Amazon, there's just like literally no downside, because I think it's 5% to 7% of the revenue, or maybe 8%, 5 to 8% of the revenue for your purchases on Amazon come here, and it doesn't cost you anything. So it's just like, you know, you're saying, hey, whatever, just give them a cut real quick, give Secular Talk a cut real quick, and I get whatever I want for the same price. So there's no downside to that if you already shop on Amazon. And again, I'm not allowed, according to the Amazon terms of service, to say bookmark it. So again, I'm just going to shut the fuck up here for 5 seconds and you can fill in the blank. It's not that you're not allowed to do it. I'm just not allowed to say it explicitly or something. I don't know why. I think they might even discourage people from... They don't want, you know, people to primarily use those links, because I think then they lose a cut. So, I mean, I guess that's the reasoning behind it. But anyway, that's the good news is we're off the Secular Talk blacklist. Bad news is there's still a giant cut, and we don't know what the new normal is going to be. And the further bad news is it's unpredictable, and we can't trust YouTube. And now other channels that probably need the support even more, smaller channels, they're now affected too. And they're being affected in a big way, in the same way that we were affected last week when it was just YouTube-apocalypse and over 95% cut. So it's still a tumultuous time for progressive media and for news and politics in general on YouTube. And again, it's the generosity of you guys in the audience that really is a game changer and saves us. Aaron Matei of The Intercept has a story out on Rachel Maddow, and it's about how her show has morphed into Russia time with Rachel Maddow. So take a look at a little clip they put together on this.
And here's the question. Is the new president going to take those troops out? In Russia, Russian, of whether or not Russia had help, whether they had Confederates inside the Trump campaign when they launched this attack. But every day I lead my show, and I think I'm going to be talking about something else. But every day, over the course of the news cycle, a new piece of it falls in place. We're about to find out if the new president of our country is going to do what Russia wants. If the presidency is effectively a Russian op, right? If the American presidency right now is the product of collusion between the Russian intelligence services and an American campaign, I mean, that is so profoundly big. This is not part of American politics. This is not, partisan warfare between Republicans and Democrats. This is international warfare against our country.
Wow. So you ready for the facts on this? This is incredible. They say, quote, The Intercept conducted a quantitative study of all 28 Rachel Maddow Show episodes in the 6-week period between February 20th and March 31st. Russia-focused segments accounted for 53% of these broadcasts. That figure is conservative, excluding segments where Russia was discussed, but was not the overarching topic. Maddow's Russia coverage has dwarfed the time devoted to other top issues, including Trump's escalating crackdown on undocumented immigrants, 1.3% of coverage, Obamacare repeal, 3.8%, the legal battle over Trump's Muslim ban, 5.6%, a surge of anti-GOP activism in town halls since Trump took office, 5.8%, and Trump administration scandals and stumbles, 11%. Rachel Maddow is covering Russia more than she's covering all other issues combined. That's embarrassing. That's embarrassing. There was a time when Rachel Maddow was a pretty good commentator. You could reliably go to her to get an idea of what was going on in politics, and she seemed to be a fairly solid liberal, solid progressive. There was even a time back in the day when she would hold her own team accountable. In fact, I seem to remember an incident where she covered how Obama escalated the war in Afghanistan, and she came out against it. And I thought, wow, isn't it great that you have these left commentators who appear to be principled and to focus on important issues that really affect people's lives? Well, now that's all gone. So, of course, you had the incident after the election where Rachel Maddow put the blame on Hillary's loss squarely at the feet of Gary Johnson and at Jill Stein and on Bernie Bros and on the Kremlin and Vladimir Putin. And she says, hack the election, they hacked the election, they hacked the election. What does that even mean, Rachel? Because that implies they got into the voting machines and changed the votes. That is utter nonsense, and that's totally misleading. The worst actual claim against them is that maybe they were the ones who took DNC emails, leaked them to WikiLeaks, and then WikiLeaks leaked them to the public. Which is a story we should have seen anyway, because we learned that the DNC was cheating. And that, there was corruption going on behind the scenes. I thought you're in favor of leaks, right? Whenever it's the Trump administration and people from within the Trump administration are leaking stuff about what's happening in there, all of a sudden leaks are fine. Whenever it was leaks under George W. Bush, oh my God, look at what they're doing. Leaks were fine. But, it's leaks about the corporate Democrats, and it makes them look like the scumbags they are, rigging the primary against Bernie Sanders. Shh, Russia hacked the election. She did a segment. I still can't believe it to this day. I was floored. Where she said, if Donald Trump takes NATO troops off of Russia's border, that's proof or evidence of Vladimir Putin having a PP tape of him. There is zero evidence the so-called PP tape even exists. That actually is fake news. And when Trump shoots fake news, people like Rachel Maddow are giving him fucking credibility because he actually, once in a blue moon, he happens to say fake news when it's actually fake news. But now you just, delegitimized yourself. And to say that removing NATO troops from Russia's border is a bad thing, how little do you know? Seriously, how little do you know about the world? Because, there was a deal between Russia and the U.S. Okay, there's the collapse of the Soviet Union, but it's okay. We got NATO, but we're not going to go an inch closer to Russia's border because that would be provocation now, wouldn't it? And then over the years, they inch closer, and they inch closer, and they inch closer. And Russia thinks, oh my God, this is a provocation, and they're coming for us. NATO's coming for us. They promised they wouldn't move closer to our border. They're moving closer to our border. So this is an offensive act on the part of NATO. Now, in response, one of the things Vladimir Putin did was jack Crimea. I'm not in favor of that. That was bad. That was wrong. And I would have sanctioned him as a result of that. But the idea, this picture that you get in the press of, Russia's 100% wrong about everything and we're just angels and 100% right about everything. How would we react if Russian troops were on Mexico's border? Would we say that's a provocation? Because we have NATO troops on Russia's border and we act like, what do you mean? Obviously, it's bad if President Trump were to remove them. So now you've made it so that if Trump does a good thing, which is de-escalate with Russia, we're on the fucking brink of war with them. If he were to de-escalate and move the troops, oh my goodness. Vladimir Putin has a tape of hookers peeing on you or something, or hookers peeing on a bed, and it's just she's up her own ass in the partisan hackery. It's an act of war, she said. Rachel, do you realize how dangerous that is? You say it's an act of war, then what's the response? The logical response is somebody declares war on you. You got to go to war with them, right? So you're just casually, nonchalantly from your air-conditioned studio saying, yeah, World War III with Russia. But it's not partisan. It's not partisan. I love that. It's not partisan. This isn't a partisan thing. This is Russia. This isn't partisan at all. And, the smarter people who discuss the Russia issue, here's what they'll say. Look, it's not what, Rachel Maddow and the crazy Democratic hacks are saying, that it's an act of war and that they hacked the election and oh my God. That's not the problem, Kyle. The problem is it's just financial corruption. That, there's a financially corrupt deal going on between Donald Trump or his administration and Russia. So that's what we're concerned about, and that's why we keep talking about Russia. Now, is there maybe some truth to that? Sure. Like, for example, he picked Rex Tillerson to be Secretary of State. Rex Tillerson was the CEO of ExxonMobil. ExxonMobil had a multi-billion-dollar deal with the Russian government for oil and gas. But when Putin jacked Crimea, Obama said, we're going to do sanctions. Part of the sanctions are that deal is now dead. So you're going to lose out on billions upon billions upon billions of dollars. So both ExxonMobil and Russia were like, fuck. Well, Trump picks the CEO from ExxonMobil to be his Secretary of State. It looks like they're heading in the direction of reviving that deal. If they revive that deal, yes, because what they're doing is putting their own personal financial interest above the interest of the world and the country and saying, yeah, it's okay, you jacked Crimea. Here, we're going to give a deal either way with you. So then that'd be a real issue. But guess what? They haven't revived that deal yet, and you should wait for actual evidence before making the claims of corruption. You want to talk about corruption? How about the fact that Trump outsources his jobs to 15 different countries? You can talk about those, but you don't talk about those. You don't talk about the deal with South Korea. You don't talk about the deal with Turkey. You don't talk about the deal with Mexico. All you do is Russia. But why would you focus on that when there's more financial corruption and proven financial corruption with, for example, Saudi Arabia? As Trump was campaigning, he registered 8 new businesses in Saudi Arabia, a goddamn terror state. And the Democrats have nothing to say about that. Nothing. A country that makes women cover up from head to toe, says you need male guardians to go out in public, doesn't even allow women to drive. They're bombing the pants off of Yemen, massacring civilians, blockading Yemen. 17 million people are starving to death. It is a country that has the same ideology as ISIS. He opened 8 new businesses there. Not a single Democrat has said, hey, maybe that's a conflict of interest and maybe that's corrupt because now when you're president, are you going to crack down on them when they do something wrong? Of course you're not. You're going to be their bitch. You're going to do their bidding. You're going to look the other way as they violate human rights all the time. But nobody talks about the 8 new businesses in Saudi Arabia. Why? Because Russia. Because again, it's not really tied to we're concerned about corruption or it was an act of war that they did on us. It's about they may have given the DNC leaks to WikiLeaks and that's how they got out to the public. And that we think that's why Hillary lost. So we're not going to let go of the past. And this is effectively Democratic partisan hacks bitching about it was Hillary's time. She should have won. How dare you leak the stuff she actually said and exposed how corrupt she is. And as you talk about this stuff, what are you not talking about? You're not talking about single-payer health care. John Conyers proposed the bill, H.R. 676. Justice Democrats, National Nurses United, brand new Congress. You guys, the grassroots, we are pushing Democratic congressmen and women to vote for single payer and co-sponsor single payer, Medicare for all. Rachel, that should have been included in this. She probably spent none of the time talking about that. Has she spent any time talking about the free college bill that Bernie Sanders just proposed with a bunch of other lawmakers? So here are the real issues. Hey, Rachel, here are the things you used to care about, things that actually affect people's lives. The bombing of Syria, which is an offensive war waged against a country that didn't attack us, which is the same mistake we made in Iraq. What do we learn? Hey, don't topple the strong man in the Middle East. Where's Rachel Maddow with her hair on fire saying, this is the same mistake as Iraq, don't do it. Where's Rachel Maddow saying, hey, Donald, you're acting as the Air Force for ISIS right now because 60% of the rebels at least are jihadists. And you're bombing the people who are fighting the rebels. Where's Rachel Maddow's segments on that? Where's Rachel Maddow's segment on, do we really need an 8th intervention? Where's your segment on that? Where's your segment saying, hey, we're the only modern country that doesn't have a single-payer system, so maybe all the Democrats should support H.R. 676? Where's your segment on that? Where's your segment on, hey, maybe we should make the minimum wage a living wage and tie it to inflation? Maybe we should have paid vacation time and catch up to the rest of the modern world. You're not doing segments on that because you don't care about the actual policy issues that affect people. You simply don't care. You know what you care about? Russia. Because you're a partisan, loyalist, democratic hack. That's what you are, Rachel. And this right here proves it. The Trump administration is considering an offensive strike against North Korea. Yeah. So this is from NBC News. The U.S. is prepared to launch a preemptive strike with conventional weapons against North Korea should officials become convinced that North Korea is about to follow through with a nuclear weapons test, multiple senior U.S. intelligence officials told NBC News. North Korea has warned that a big event is near, and U.S. officials say signs point to a nuclear test that could come as early as this weekend. The intelligence officials told NBC News that the U.S. has positioned 2 destroyers capable of shooting Tomahawk cruise missiles in the region, one just 300 miles from the North Korean nuclear test site. American heavy bombers are also positioned in Guam to attack North Korea, should it be necessary, and earlier this week, the Pentagon announced that the USS Carl Vinson aircraft carrier strike group was being diverted to the area. The U.S. strike could include missiles and bombs, cyber and special operations on the ground. The danger of such an attack by the U.S. is that it could provoke the volatile and unpredictable North Korean regime to launch its own blistering attack on its southern neighbor. On Wednesday, North Korea said it would hit the U.S. first with a nuclear weapon should there be any signs of U.S. strikes. On Thursday, North Korea warned of a merciless retaliatory strike should the U.S. take any action. Now, this story actually gets even more frustrating and scary because, so after this story was released, you had officials in the Trump administration who were apoplectic. And they're like, how dare NBC News write this? This is dangerous to them to write this, and it's also just fundamentally not true. And everybody went, okay, so go ahead. You tell me what the real story is. So what are the plans here with North Korea? They're like, we are not planning a preemptive strike. We are not planning an offensive strike. What we're saying is there would be a retaliatory strike. And so reporters were like, okay, retaliatory to what? And they go, oh, a nuclear test. It's a test. North Korea did plenty of nuclear tests under Obama. Now, look, do I like it? Of course not. Is it good? Of course not. Is it something you should wage an literal attack on them for doing? No. But that's the thing is like, his administration is just filled to the brim with neocons now, and they run everything to the point where they're serious when they say it is retaliatory on our part to strike them if they do a test. That's what they say. They're like, no, they couldn't believe somebody would suggest that, a preemptive offensive strike against North Korea is indeed preemptive and offensive if they dare do a nuclear test. No, but that is preemptive. That is offensive. A test is a test. A test doesn't mean, hey, we just launched against South Korea or we just launched against Tokyo or Alaska or California. Sorry, fuckface. We're coming after you. No, it means they're fucking doing a test. They've done tests under Obama. But they say, now, this is how you know the neocons have taken over. They go, yeah, but if they do that test, we're going to attack them. And you can't call it preemptive or offensive. That is what we're going to call it because that is what it fucking is, you idiot. This is dangerous, man. This is really dangerous. They're handling this the exact wrong way. And their rhetoric is all like, tisk, tisk, look at them escalating. You literally just took warships and moved them to North Korea, right near where North Korea is, in strike range. Who the fuck does... Oh, let's move the warships there, and then we will wag our finger at you for maybe doing a test. Again, I don't like the test. It's not a good thing. Is it something to start a war over? No. You're cornering a man, baby. The guy, he's a hereditary authoritarian leader. He was given a country by a dad who pretended that they're demigods. Why are you playing with fire? That motherfucker's crazy. Stay the fuck away from him. That's what I would do. Look, do I feel horrible for the people in this country? Of course I do. But don't we have enough evidence to prove that regime change doesn't fucking work? What are you going to do? Okay, we'll attack them. And then what? Even assuming the best case scenario, we toppled the North Korean regime and they didn't launch a counter-strike against Seoul, which, by the way, they would immediately. Let's be clear about that. Goodbye, Seoul, if that were to happen. But let's say that for whatever reason, weapons malfunctions, yada, yada, didn't happen. Well, then what? Hey, we toppled the fucking demigod. That's how they're viewed in North Korea. I guarantee you tomorrow, a Jeffersonian democracy is going to flourish. Their internet has like 6 sites. What are you going to do? Teach a whole country? Oh, by the way, so this is how a parliamentary system works. Let's sit down and talk. You can't fucking... Are you kidding me? Well, unless, what do you want to do? You want the U.S. to just go in there and run everything? We don't even have clean water in Flint, Michigan, but you want to occupy North Korea and fix their system of government, which is 17 different levels of fucked? I can't, man. The neocons now completely and utterly run the Trump administration. It's not even close. It's not even close. I mean, look, you have 2 different factions within the Trump administration. You have the faction that is the establishment Republicans and the globalists, if you will, like Jared Kushner, Gary Cohn, all the people from the military-industrial complex. So that's one faction of the Trump administration. The other faction is the ultra-nationalists. That's Steve Bannon. Now, with Steve Bannon, you don't want him to win on issues like immigration, where he's as hardline as it gets. There was an old radio clip of him saying he basically even wants to kick out legal immigrants. He doesn't like legal immigration. He doesn't like people from South Asia coming to Silicon Valley. He's as extreme as it gets on that issue. He's as extreme as it gets on many social issues. Like, he would love nationwide stop and frisk. He wants to ban all Muslims. So you don't want him to win on that. What you do want Steve Bannon to win on, economics, because he's more protectionist than the others in the administration, and foreign policy. As bad as these guys are, they're also Pat Buchanan-esque. They're like paleo-conservatives, where they say, we don't want to do interventions. We don't agree. We're not neocons. But apparently the neocons have Trump's ear. And there are reports, when Steve Bannon was kicked off the National Security Council, I went, uh-oh. Because that's the one area where he could have been a mitigating force, like on the issue of Syria, for example, where he would have said, just don't go in. But the others were like, yo, we got to go in because freedom and democracy and the military-industrial complex is awesome and stuff. So when he was kicked off there, I was like, uh-oh. And then what happened? Now there are reports that he's being pushed more and more to the side. He might get fired now. So it'd be a weird thing. But yes, if Steve Bannon gets fired, that means that on economic issues and on foreign policy issues, the Trump administration will get even worse. And that's what's happening. You have Gary Cohn, the people from Goldman Sachs, Jared Kushner, the rest of the establishment. They're running Trump's administration when it comes to foreign policy and when it comes to economics too, obviously. So maybe the only thing that Bannon still had influence on Trump over was TPP. The one decent thing he did. So this is horrific, man. And it's the crown prize of the neocon. What has Trump done so far foreign policy-wise since being in there? Increased drone strikes 432%. Put boots on the ground, more boots on the ground in Afghanistan and in Syria. Launched an offensive attack against the Syrian government. And now we know, the fucking near-nuclear bomb in Afghanistan that he just dropped yesterday. Insanity. Meanwhile, he's attacking ISIS. There's maximum 800 ISIS fighters in eastern Afghanistan. You need a near-nuclear weapon for that? And they're fighting the Taliban. Let them fucking fight. Who cares? And now we know North Korea is next. They're thinking, let's do something about North Korea. That is such a bad idea. I can't even put into words how bad an idea it is, because here's how it would actually go down. You would have an attack against North Korea. So they would say, you did a missile test. Then they would do an attack. All their rhetoric says, we'll do an attack if you do a missile test. Unless at the last minute there's a Hail Mary from one reasonable person in the administration who goes, yeah, you don't do it. You can't attack. But all their rhetoric is, we'll attack if they do a test. If we attack, they attack Seoul. It's not even a question. They attack Seoul, South Korea. And by the way, they're claiming, North Korea is claiming, no, we won't attack Seoul. If the U.S. attacks, we'll attack the U.S. Now, look, the intelligence that we have on them says they don't have the capability, they don't have the long-range weapons to do so. But do you want to roll the fucking dice? Is that what you want to do? Here, I'm president. Here's how I handle North Korea. Warships, gone. Take them out. There no more in North Korean waters. Amped up rhetoric and fucking aggressive tweets from Trump, done. Don't even discuss North Korea in that sense in any way. You call China to the table, you talk with China, you de-escalate the situation. You want to let them do their shitty fucking tests? Let them do their shitty fucking tests. Guys, it's a fucking hereditary dictatorship, one of the poorest countries in the world, one of the most isolated countries in the world. They're not going to launch an offensive attack. They're not going to do an offensive attack. They know they'd be obliterated immediately. But if you attack them first, then they're going to attack. So let the fucking man baby have his backwards ass country. And if you have any effect on them, you have to do it through diplomatic channels. You have to be clever about it. You have to be smart about it. You can't do it. You can undermine his dictatorship through reasonable methods using, your words and negotiating tactics and back channels. That's how you handle something like this. The idea that you're about to do a standoff with probably literally the craziest leader in the world. Why would you do that? Well, the answer is the neocons now run the Trump administration.